Towson, Baltimore, and a little bit here this week. Orioles getting an off day to start the week, and then, of course, the Pirates, and then the Nationals, and then off to New York this weekend. It's been a little bit of a mixed bag around here, and I love talking baseball with this guy. He's down there in Atlanta, but he's really like hanging out on some lake in South Carolina he's never invited me to. He is one of our many mentors and friends around here for a number of years. He is a Marylander by birth, but an Atlanta Brave by heart. We welcome legendary pitching coach Leo Mazzoni back onto the program. Leo, you going to Cooperstown? Who are they putting in this year?
Well, it's John Sherholtz is going in. By the way, a Marylander.
A Baltimorean, more than that.
John Sherholtz goes in this year, so we'll be out there celebrating for a 3-day weekend. And then I think pretty sure the following year is Chipper Jones. So we still got a couple of more trips to make. We've been regulars out there now for the last 3 or 4 years. So a lot of fun. And you know what? A lot of reminiscing, a lot of great pride in what we accomplished over that great run from 1991 through 2005.
I was going to say, it's almost like a rule. They've got to put a Brave in every year here lately, and I know you guys have been having some fun with this, but this is interesting with Sherholtz, right? Because, beyond my affection for him and his local ties and his Towson ties and, everything that went on here, he went out to Kansas City and down to Atlanta to do his thing primarily, and, I was doing a book on coaching and leadership about 7 or 8 years ago, and I went down to Orlando. I think you had left there. I think you might have been here by then. And I sat with him. I said, now let's talk about coaching and leadership. He said, I wrote a whole book on that, and he handed me his book. He said, here, everything I think's in here. And I thought, well, if it could just be that easy, right? I mean, he sort of kind of made it look easy from a player personnel and acquisition standpoint, and then the money came, but I don't know that anyone is going to have the kind of track record the Atlanta Braves had as far as winning divisions and distancing themselves from every other team during the regular season.
No question about it. And, he did it. And how about doing it with 2 teams, one with Kansas City, then the longevity of the success of the Braves. But John was very well organized, very astute knowledge of the game of baseball. And the one thing I used to love about him is when he asked the coaching staff to recommend a free agent or recommend a player, would you do this trade or would you do this? He said, throw salary out of the equation. It's the front office's job to take care of salary. Coaches, don't ask me, well, what's he going to make in 2 years? I don't want to know that. He says, I want to know whether you think he can help us win, bottom line.
Well,
and, he did that sort of thing, and then he was able to make a lot of change, but kept the horses together. In other words, he'd keep your base together, but make a lot of changes in between. And he did. I can't remember him making a bad deal, to be honest with you.
Well, and the other thing, he was such a no-nonsense kind of guy, as I knew him. I mean, he wasn't a guy who suffered fools, right?
Yeah, he started to loosen up later on. I mean, first. When he first got there, I mean, it was hammered down, and you'd walk around with your head on a swivel. But over the years, he and Bobby created a great relationship, and everybody loosened up, and everybody really started to enjoy the relationship between the front office and downstairs. And that was the strength of the Braves. That the strength of the Braves that you try to tell to other organizations, the strength of the Brave was the chain of command was never broken. And you had the ownership, then you had the president, then you had the general manager, then you had the manager, then you had coaches, then you had your farm system, etc. But the chain of command was never allowed to be broken. No coach, if they ever tried to go over anybody's head to complain about a certain situation to John Sherholtz, you know what he would have told them to do? Get out of the office.
For you in getting the gig there, how did that all come together that you spent 16 seasons? I mean, I'm sure when you started there, you weren't thinking that was going to be the long chain for you, but it was sort of your first big league gig, and you never really relinquished it, right?
Well, no, not at all. And the bottom line is this. It started in 1986 when Bobby became the general manager. Remember, he came over from Toronto, and he became the general manager. And the first thing he did was he said he's going to turn an offensive-oriented organization into a pitching one. And I laugh now when I hear pitchers complaining about the ballpark in Atlanta where it's jumping like crazy. Well, guess what? Nobody said we'd ever get any pitching in the launching pad. Atlanta Fulton County was called the launching pad. And so, therefore, we dispelled that myth. So, but you could see it coming from 86 through 90. You could see that Bobby building the pitching through the scouting system and the scouting department and the minor league system, and he put in. And he did that with the Mike Stan. I mean, it wasn't just Maddox, or it wasn't just Glavine and Smoltz at the time. It was Pete Smith and Kent Merker and Mike Stanton, and the list goes on that we graduated to the big leagues. And of course, then you had Smoltz, Avery, and Glavine who graduated through to the big leagues, and then you add Maddox into the equation in '93, and then we took off. But we knew that. Here's the genius of Bobby Cox too. At the end of 1990, when we finished the season, we got there June 22nd, 1990, and our rotation started to develop. But you couldn't see it because the Braves had a losing record, and so Bobby said, "Leo, bring our 5 starters out. This is the last day of the season." He said, "Bring them in the dugout at 2:00." He said, "I want to talk to him." He said, "You be with me." I said, "Okay." So at 2:00 on the last game of the season in 1990, he told Charlie Leibrandt, the left-handed, he was our lone veteran. Then he told Glavine, Smoltz, Steve Avery, and Pete Smith. He said, "You 5 guys, when we go to spring training in 1991, you 5 guys are the starting rotation. I don't care what happens in spring training. You stay healthy in spring training, pitch your regular turn in spring training. We're not going to deviate. We're not going to flip-flop. We're not going to do anything. You 5 guys are the starting rotation. You will be the rotation that carries as far as we can go next year." And it took us to the 7th game of the World Series.
Well, confidence is everything, and I think for young pitchers and young people in general, serving their master, making the boss happy, trying to keep their gig, trying to keep their turn in a rotation,
right.
Especially through the scuffle, right? I mean, because this was not easy, and early on there was a lot of lacking confidence there.
Oh my golly! At the halfway point, we were 8 games out in 1991, and Smoltz was 2-11, but the bottom line is the reason John Smoltz is going to the Hall of Fame is because Bobby Cox didn't take him out of the rotation when he was 2-11. When Bobby just said he's the best 2-11 pitcher I've ever seen, and it gave him the opportunity to start after that, and we never deviated from that rotation. Then I found out from Jim Powell, who's now a radio voice of the Braves, him and Don Sutton on 680 The Fan. I didn't realize this. From 1991 through 1993, we went 537 consecutive starts, and we missed 1 start.
Really?
537. Now, if that was the case today, our guys wouldn't have been allowed to do that because none of our young starters, they would all had too many innings pitched, and some smart dude would say they can't pitch anymore because they got too many innings.
You are, you've been on that rampage about this, and it's hard for me to think that you've been out of the game for 10 years. I mean, it feels like about a minute and a half ago you were running around out here with the Oriole cap on, and and they threw you out of here with a year left on your deal. Gave you a little vacation.
I was talking to a guy from the Sporting News yesterday, and I was talking about. He said, Leo, he said, when you were in Baltimore, he said, I know it was rough. He said, but you know what? I looked up a couple of things like Eric Bedard and Jeremy Guthrie and Chris Ray. He goes. And even Chris Benson had a decent year. And Daniel Cabrera, even though he was like 1 game under 500, he still was there for 2 years making all his starts. So when you look at that, besides all the other stuff, there just wasn't enough talent. But if you look at that and look at Bedard making his starts and Jeremy making his starts and Daniel making his starts, those were young pitchers on the rise, And but then again, I don't know why they cut it short as far as giving us the opportunity to finish it off.
I saw a story 2 weeks ago, and I had Tom Verducci on, longtime writer who I know you're familiar with as well, writing about curveballs and how the curveball has changed the modern game. And it's been 10 years for you. Do you see things that have changed dramatically? Obviously strikeouts are incredibly up. Velocity is up. Yeah. I mean, if you had to come back now, it is a little bit of a different game, right?
Well, if you had to come back now, what you try to do is you try to number one, your only goal would be, my goal to coach pitchers would be to control the effort on the fastball so that they can have longevity. In other words, find out what the effort would be on your fastball in order to trust the finished product. And if you can do that without maxing out your effort, then you really lower the risk of arm injury. The other thing is, too, guys would be throwing more in between starts, that's for sure. Not on the outfield flat-footed, but on the mound going downhill to a catcher. The other thing is that, I'd put more emphasis on starting rotation, starting pitchers. In other words, if your rotation can take you deeper into the game, that helps, that keeps your bullpen healthy. The other thing you would do is if you had setup guys that threw taught them how to throw great change or good change-ups, then that would negate so many lefty-righty changes in the situations where lefty-righty. If your setup guy had a good straight change, then you would want somebody to pinch hit, and then you'd say, "Go ahead, knock yourself out." Those types of things. But the curveball, the curveball is a pitch that goes more north and south. And right now, you see a few more guys pitching more north and south. Now, I don't agree the other night. Remember Jim Johnson, right-handed sinker baller?
Sure.
He's the Braves closer now. I had him in Baltimore for a while. But the thing I disagree with is this. Jim Johnson's a sinker ball pitcher, and he's trying to close out a game, and the catcher's almost standing up wanting a high fastball. Now, that is going way overboard with what the hitter can't hit and what the pitcher, instead of what the pitcher can't throw. You see what I mean there? In other words, if you're a sinker baller, we're going with that strength. I don't care what the opposing hitter is doing. What am I going to do trying to tell a sinker baller to throw a high fastball? The other thing is, but the curveball is back in the game, and I think that's good. I think that's very good. Before, the curveball left for a while because pitchers couldn't get any called strikes with it. It was never called. But now you're getting swings and misses. But I think because of the north and south part of the game, pitching into the equation now, as just opposed to east and west, has brought the curveball back. And you know what? It's a great pitch. And I never heard a scouting report yet that said this guy could hit a good curveball. You can forget it. I don't think the game's been invented or a hitter's been invented. They can hit a good curveball. Now, there's a lot of guys that can hit a breaking ball strike, but they can't hit a good curveball.
Leo Mazzoni joining us here, the man, the myth, the legend, and, of course, legendary pitching coach of the Atlanta Braves, and, of course, here in Baltimore. He is a Marylander, living down on a lake in South Carolina where he's never taken me fishing, but we're looking to change that at some point. He's also doing sports radio at 680 The Fan in Hotlanta every Saturday morning at 9 a.m., and working with these young people at Furman University as a pitching coach there along with Brett Harker. And, some thoughts about young people and the curveball, because I talked to Verducci about this, and I know when I was growing up in the early 70s and you were throwing minor league ball in that Giants organization, my dad would say, can't throw a curveball till you're 12 or till you're 14 or till you're 16 or whatever. What are you seeing from these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that's a little bit different probably than you in the big leagues and certainly 20, 30 years removed?
Right. Well, I mean, I can always compare it to Steve Avery. Steve Avery was 21 throwing a curveball when he was 1991. And, John Smoltz had a great slider and a great curve. So I've seen some of the greatest breaking balls in the game. Here's the bottom line. People ask me that all the time. If you have a youngster that has very good coordination with his fastball, okay, and you watch the release on that fastball, and if that fastball is a smooth release, you can start teaching him how to spin a breaking ball. If he doesn't have a well coordinated release on a fastball, then you're going to have to wait till he grows into that coordination before you go to a breaking ball. But I disagree with the fact now we're finding out it isn't a breaking ball that hurts your arm. What's hurting pitchers' arms is trying to create so much velocity now. Trying to live up to the radar gun number, trying to create velocity because they're being told if they don't hit a certain number on a radar gun, they don't make a club. John Smoltz and I've talked about this, and we spoke publicly about it. We'd love to get the radar gun eliminated up through high school.
Well, they wouldn't let Maddox into big leagues, right? Maddox would never had a career if it was about breaking glass, right?
Well, I mean, like Maddox and Glavine threw 90 when they were 19 and 20, but they averaged, they settled in at an 88 with movement and change of speeds. And also, I can tell you this right now: you watch those games, and I can promise you, I see a guy. You just subtract 5 miles an hour from what they're saying on TV. You subtract 5 miles an hour, because when you watch the reaction of hitters to pitches, and this guy's throwing a certain number on a gun, and they're going, oh, he threw that one like 100, and the guy swung at it like it was 85 or 86. Give me a break. I subtract 5 miles an hour from every number I see on that TV screen because they've been blown up to dramatize the velocity. And these kids are watching this, and these kids are paying attention to velocity, and they're being told by scouts, and they're being told by their high school coaches, you can't make this team unless you throw this hard. And that's a bunch of BS. That's what's ruining pitchers. It's not learning how to throw a curveball. By the way, when you do teach somebody how to throw a curveball, I hope the coach that's teaching them is smart enough to show them how to cushion their elbow on a breaking ball.
He is Leo Mazzoni. He still goes out and does lots of pitching seminars around the country, as well as doing some radio down there in Atlanta. The strikeouts, and the part of striking out someone. Leo, when I played, look, I played pony ball, little league, and all that stuff. I really prided myself on never ever striking out. I mean, I thought like striking out, it would wreck my weekend. With the girls at the roller skating rink, if I had struck out once, let alone 2 or 3, or did the Golden Halo thing. There's no shame in striking out. We talk about Chris Davis around here now. He is on pace to strike out more than anyone in the history of the game during a year. They've given him enough money. He's a veteran player. Unless he gets injured, he's going to get his 614 at-bats or whatever. And the strikeout has become, every night I look up, the Orioles, if they strike out 8 times, it feels like a good night. I mean, that used to be the death knell to strike out 11, 12 times in a game.
Well,
it's ordinary.
The other night, Milwaukee and L.A., they had 14 and 24 strikeouts through 6 or 7 innings. I mean, total. I mean, Kershaw had 14, the Milwaukee starter had 10, and you were in the 6th inning. I mean, it's all over the place, and guys are, nobody shortens up with 2 strikes anymore. I saw somebody from Cincinnati do it the other day and got a base hit to right field against Atlanta, and that was a breath of fresh air. But nobody shortens up to put the ball in play anymore. Everybody's going for the gusto, as they say. But you know what? That even makes more of a theory as to what we used to think, and what Greg Maddux told me one time. He said, Leo, the most vulnerable count a hitter can have is no balls and 2 strikes, and I'm going to take him out immediately. And, that approach there really works today because you get so many swings and misses and so many chases. And once again, that curveball does come into play. That curveball does come into play when you're going north and south and you're getting chases with 2 strikes. And, in other words, if you got a live fastball, instead of throwing a slider, which is a medium pitch, it's that in-between speed pitch, a curveball automatically gives you a built-in change of speeds, and plus the fact that can get you out front and get you, and if you throw it lower than low ahead in the count, then you get the swing and miss. So the difference between a fastball with velocity is there we go. I'm saying it. Fastball that has light, let me put it that way. And then between the slider and the curve is this. The slider slows it down just enough if it's in the strike zone for the hitter to get on it. The curveball gives you the automatic built-in change of speeds.
Leo, if your team struck out 11 times on Thursday and 9 times on Friday and 14 times on Saturday and 12 times on Sunday, and you split the series and hit a couple of home runs, maybe a guy of your age wouldn't think that's very good, right? I mean, I think the mindset has changed about it, right?
If we won the series, you're in the environment that you're in because the other teams are doing the exact same thing. I mean, it isn't like you're out there on an island by yourself. And plus, the fact is, the Orioles do have a great offensive team. So, if you're splitting series or winning series, that means that what you're doing, the other team's doing pretty much the same thing too. It's when you're losing series or when you have a losing record, then you start to look around a little bit. But as long as you're winning, you're thinking, well, everybody else, well, sure, you're going to continue to work at getting more contact, putting the ball in play. But, this thing of, and it used to be too, I think where this all started was hitters were being told to work the count. Well, hitters were being told to work the count because they were trying to get pitchers' pitch counts up in order to get the starting pitcher out of the game. Well, now the way the game is being played, you don't want to work the count too much anymore because you might be taking the starting pitcher out and bringing in a setup guy that has better stuff. Whereas in my time, the setup guy, you wanted your starter to get to your closer with your setup guy being a little bit of a gap, but if you didn't have to use them, that was great.
Well, the bullpen guys were all failed starters, pretty much. Now the bullpen guys are lifer bullpen guys, right?
Well, I think if your best bullpen guys are guys that started in the minor leagues, yet they're not they can't break in the rotation of the big leagues. I don't believe you develop a reliever in the minor leagues as far as having some young kid that can throw real hard, saying, "Oh, we're going to make him a closer." Well, he's never going to learn how the hell to pitch. He's just going to go in for an inning in a minor league game and blow somebody's doors off, and then he'll get into the big leagues and say, "Oh my, look at this," and he'll blow out. Then excuse me. Then they'll have to interchange again. Excuse me. Same with the setup guys. Look at the change in the setup guys now in the big leagues. They shuffle them in and out like it was, you were in a grocery line. Okay, he's throwing 100. Good. He did that for 2 months. He can't do it no more. Okay, let's get somebody else. By the way, he ain't throwing 100, to be honest with you.
Leo, last thing for you. Down there running around with the Braves, and it's been a scuffle the last couple years for them to get this thing right. But for the Nationals and the mindset of a team that's pretty much on cruise control, right? I mean, not just that they're playing 650 ball or whatever. They don't need to play 650 ball. It's June, and the division's over, kind of, sort of, right?
Well, I personally believe there's two divisions that are over. I believe that Washington's got theirs nailed, and I think Houston has theirs nailed too. Those are two good ball clubs, with both of them having a real good chance to go a long way in the postseason.
Well, you had that a lot in Atlanta, where in June you guys had a 9-game, 10-game lead or whatever. I don't know that it ever changed the way Maddox or Glavine or Smoltz or any of those guys took the ball.
Yeah, here's the thing: it didn't change one thing. Everybody says, "Oh, is it better to have a big lead? Is it better to have a pennant race?" Excuse me. Here's what our philosophy was: the only thing we changed was when it was time for their last start. Just their last start, not a month before. Not, okay, let's take them out after 5. Let's save this. Let's do this. Let's do that. That's all BS. And if you're not careful, you'll take that sharpness away. You'll take that routine away. You'll take that freshness away, which you're trying to keep. You're going to make it worse. On the last go-around, say Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz, Steve Avery, and Kevin Millwood. Say that was our 5-man. Pretty good 5, wasn't it? Anyway, and so you would go to them the last 10 days of, that's 2 5s or 10. How many innings you want before your last start for a tune-up for postseason? And that was it. Nothing else changed. I think it's a joke now. Well, let's see. Let's shut him down for 10 days, then bring him back for 10 days. You know how hard that is on a pitcher's arm to shut him down and try to bring him back? It's absolutely asinine.
It's like stopping going to the gym and then going back to the gym, right? Exactly.
The Mets have ruined their staff. They cut down throwing bullpen sessions. They cut down throwing this. Don't throw this. Let's throw flat-footed. Let's do this. By the way, they're also throwing that. Baseball is finding out, whether they want to admit it or not, that flat-footed throwing in the outfield that takes the place of doing what your mound work is actually hurts you more than helps you physically. You know why? Because when you're on a mound, you have a little bit of a cushion. You're falling downhill toward home plate. And I had a pitching coach one time told me, he said, "You know what, Mazzoni?" He goes, "You have your guys throw a little too much." He said, "They won't have nothing left in August." And I said, "Well, what do you guys do in August that I do when I put them on a mound?" And he said, "We play flat-footed throwing in the outfield." I said, "Well, explain to me the difference between flat-footed throwing in the outfield and throwing off of a mound going down to the catcher at home plate at 60 feet 6 inches." He goes, "They'll have a tendency to throw too hard." I said, "Well, that's what the hell they pay you for, is to regulate the effort."
He is Leo Mazzoni, longtime and legendary pitching coach for the Atlanta Braves. Always fun to visit with you. Leo, one of my favorite guests, because I always learn something when I bring you on here, man. But maybe that's the coach and the teacher in you, huh?
Well, I love talking pitching, and I love trying to educate the people that are listening that some of this stuff that they're hearing and some of the stuff that their kids are hearing is not correct whatsoever. A lot of it's not even close. And remember one thing, more often with less exertion is so much better than less often with more exertion.
Man, I'm going to put that. I'm going to write that. And when you get a Twitter account, we're going to make that the caption of the whole thing.
Just do it on my wife's email.
Hey, Leo, go catch some fish. Go hit the golf ball. Go have some beverages and enjoy that Georgia, South Carolina scene going on down there as the good weather comes, my friend.
All right, but listen, I can't find any crab cakes here like I had in Baltimore. Let's go. We got to ship some up here.
All right. Never a tourist crab cake for you, Leo Mazzoni.
Yeah,
never.
That's right.
Thanks for coming on. It's always good to visit with you.
Okay, take care.
You got it. Leo Mazzoni. He does sports radio at 680 The Fan down in Hotlanta, Georgia, just on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. You can get his wisdom. You can also find that out in the Bayou, Toyota.com audio vault. He's also the pitching coach at Furman University and running around doing seminars and always gracious and very generous with his time when he visits with us up here. We love having Leo on. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where you won't blow your arm out. You get in there, work yourself out, do it right this summer. Get a little bit of help while you're on the way. Get yourself in the best shape of your life, no matter who you are. They do have the lunk alarm there. Everyone is welcome at Planet Fitness. Last but never least, breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Nothing but bad news on Thursday and Friday from the Ravens' perspective, but we do get that news out to you first, even when it's not news you want sometimes. All brought to you by Dennis and our friends over at Coons. And, of course, Thursday, Dennis will be here from 3 until 5 doing the SSV on WNST. I'm out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.